Russia is trying to meddle in the 2024 presidential election, and that's according to the Justice Department. New charges were unsealed Wednesday against two employees from the Russian state-run media company RT. Feds also say they seized internet domains used by the Russian government to spread disinformation. Here's some of what Attorney General Merrick Garland said earlier.
The American people are entitled to know when a foreign power is attempting to exploit our country's free exchange of ideas in order.
So I want to ask a real quick question. If it was the left and being promoted for the, let's say, the Harris campaign, do you suppose that our own government would go down so hard on these influencers? I don't know, because it seems like I remember a lot of influencers being kind of promoted when the Biden administration was in full swing.
To send around its own propaganda.
CBS News Homeland Security and Justice reporter Nicole Skanga joins us now from the Justice Department. Nicole, so what kind of disinformation are we talking about here, according to the Justice Department?
Yeah, John, it's an important question, and one notorious Russian group known as Doppelganger is known for spreading disinformation aimed at undermining U.S. trust in elections, weakening any sort of U.S. opposition to core Russian interests, particularly given the ongoing war in Ukraine, trying to discredit NATO and amplifying some U.S. domestic divisions. A little bit of don't pay attention to what we're doing over here, focus on your own country. In another instance of an unsealed indictment today, the Department of Justice pointing out two RT employees accused of operating as foreign agents, funneling $10 million to a Tennessee-based media company. And just to give you a sense of the size and scope, the influence, that company producing over 2,000 videos.
So exactly what was that misinformation, or was it misinformation? Was it something that the right has been pushing and trying to tell the truth on for a long time? Is it something the government doesn't want you to know? The thing is, we have gotten to a point where we mistrust our government. We mistrust the media because it's, coercion with the government on manipulating what's, being put out there. What's the difference between getting misinformation from our own government or misinformation from another country, which we're always interfering with other country and their election stuff?
2,000 videos on subjects like immigration, inflation, 16 million views on those videos, John.
And so the immigration and inflation sounds like just general pot stirring, as you said, get people focused on something other than Ukraine, but also just to the extent that Americans are at each other's, are barking at each other, that creates division.
That's basically what they're doing already here in the United States. It doesn't have to come from another country.
How different is that from what the Russians were engaged in 2016?
You see what I mean? They kind of want us to believe it's true this time, which it may be. But because they did the hoax last time, we have trouble believing things that our own government tells us.
Yeah, it is a lot of pot stirring, a lot of hot button pressing. And, Attorney General Garland was asked today, how is this different from 2016? And he said, well, we're seeing an accelerated Russian disinformation and foreign influence campaign here. We're seeing the use of things like artificial intelligence in order to speed up and multiply bot forms, which are so good at peddling and spreading disinformation across multiple social media companies. Garland calling it a bigger threat than it ever was before. But officials were quick to point out that we've seen this movie before, right? Russia is not necessarily new to the disinformation game. That Russian efforts to meddle in the U.S. elections date back several campaign cycles. Most notably in 2016, there was, of course, that Russian-sponsored hack and leak campaign targeting the DNC and then Hillary Clinton's campaign. So we're looking at a dangerous game with some...
See what I mean? They're actually pushing what has been proven to be a hoax for the last election bringing it back up and acting as if it was real so it could tie into what they're the narrative right now. So you guys leave a comment down below. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.
New shiny tools, but it's essentially the same game, John.
Nicole, last question. I'll sneak two in there for you. One, did the Department of Justice make any claim about in whose interest these efforts, other than the Russian interests, obviously, were they picking a side? Are the Russians picking a side in the election, presidential election? And the second is that Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, said something about how the Russians are using influencers to do their work. What does that mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen both today in these pages in the indictment and also previously the U.S. has stated that Russia tends to pick Donald Trump's side, candidly. And if you look at that one indictment, those two employees of, Russia's state-controlled media that are now being charged with pouring money into that Tennessee-based media company. That company was essentially enlisting popular right-wing social media influencers. Now, we have to be careful here, John. They're not listed outright in the indictment itself, but the DOJ here and prosecutors describing the company as a network of heterodox commentators that focus on Western political and cultural issues, saying that they were incorporated on January 19th, 2022. We did some digging ourselves within Tennessee Secretary of State's office incorporation records and found that that description, as well as that incorporation date, matches exactly Tenet Media Company, a media startup representing far-right voices some of our viewers might recognize, like Benny Johnson, Tim Pool, and Dave Rubin. We've, of course, reached out to Tenet Media for comment, but have not yet heard back. John?